Hi guys, I wanted to pop in this evening. My kids, I made tacos for them tonight for dinner, and normally with tacos, I'll make cheese dip as well. So I was gonna go ahead and make some cheese dip, and I decided to just go ahead and record how I make my cheese dip. So what I normally will do, I'm gonna start out with a little bit of butter. And I'm going to turn my pot on, and it's just a little bit of butter, and I'm going to saute these diced jalapenos that I have left over from the chili that I made yesterday. And I'm going to saute those until they're soft. And let's see here. And then I'll remove those from the heat and then add in my ground beef. You can add, use ground chicken. You can use ground turkey. I've used shredded chicken before for cheese dip. That was, it was good. I also, you can use sausage and ground beef. You can mix that together, or you can just use sausage, crumble some sausage for your cheese dip. But for this cheese dip, I'm just gonna, and some people use seafood too. A friend of my husband's, she puts shrimp and all kinds of stuff in her cheese dip, and it's really good. But for this one, I'm going to put ground beef. I'm going to use ground beef for this one. Let me go ahead and get these jalapenos. And my husband, soon to be ex-husband, whatever, he likes cheese dip with his tacos. So I'll normally make like a little small pot of cheese dip for him to go with his taco whenever we have like a taco night, and sometimes we do tacos and taco salad or whatever, but he likes to have cheese dip with his. So I've just kind of gotten into the habit of making a small batch of cheese dip for him. The kids can kind of take it or leave it, but so I'm going to wait for this to saute and then have that soften. I'm going to add put a little bit of salt in there so that the vegetables can, sweat a little bit. Okay, so the jalapenos are pretty well softened. I'll kind of show you those. They smell really, really good. So I'm going to go ahead and get those poured back into my little sauteed vegetable bowl. And then I'm going to add about a pound of ground beef, ground chuck, to to my pot or saucepan or what have you. And I'm just going to brown the ground beef. And I am going to salt and pepper it. It's about a pound. And I've got to reserve some of this for my soup I'm supposed to be making. So that's about a pound. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and place this back on the heat. And I'm going to grab a fork because I prefer a fork when I'm working with ground beef. Okay, so I've got that going. And what I use for my cheese dip, I will use whipped cream cheese, Rotel, some Velveeta, some heavy whipping cream, just to kind of, add a little bit of a creaminess to the cheese dip. And I kind of dilute the whipping cream with water. But as I go along, I'll determine if I want to use any whipping cream or not. Because sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't use any. And then I use this Tostitos cheese as well. I mix this with the Velveeta. And it just, we like the way it tastes. So then on my Rotel, like I said, my kids don't care for tomatoes, so I'll normally strain and get the liquid out, put it in there. There may be just a few tomatoes in there, but then I'll reserve some of the tomatoes on the side for, like when my husband, he wants cheese dip, he likes tomatoes in his, so then I'll just put this to the side for him. So if you have a family member that enjoys the tomatoes or what have you from the Rotel, you can always just put some to the side for them, enough for them, you know, to use or whatever. But in my family, my kids don't like, they don't eat diced tomatoes. Okay, so I'm gonna salt and pepper this ground beef. And I'm gonna use black pepper for this. And I will, I may put some black pepper in the cheese dip as well. I don't, it just depends on, it's kind of a mood thing for me. So sometimes I'll add it and sometimes I won't, but I always add, you know, do a salt and peppering for the protein. And you're going to want to make sure to drain your ground beef as well. Some people don't drain it, you know, for cheese dip. They will leave the, if they use chorizo or if they use sausage or ground beef or all three or what have you, they will leave the some of the drippings from the meat in the cheese dip just to give the cheese dip another kind of, you know, some fat content, another kind of taste, the rendering from those meats. So it's just kind of whatever you want to do, whatever your personal preference is. And you know, you can always make your own chips if you want to. You get you some corn tortillas and cut them up into strips or into triangles and drop those in some hot oil and make you some tortilla chips. Those are good. Then you can season them any kind of way you want. You can put lime salt on them or just salt and pepper, you know, once they come out of the grease, or lemon salt or whatever you're wanting. You have a little bit more control over making the chips at home versus buying a bag. But I do understand that it can be time consuming, but it really doesn't take very long to fry some chips. I mean, you just heat the grease up and, you know, cut up the corn tortillas. Or you can use flour, but most people use corn. Fry those and season them how you want. All right, so I've got that. That's done. I'm going to strain some of this grease off, and then I'll add the jalapeno back to it. I'm going to add the Tostitos cheese to this. Okay. And depending on the amount of cheese dip, you can either add half a jar, because that's what I normally will do, and it's just for one person, or the whole jar. Okay. I'm going to stir that in. Okay, and then next I'm going to add in the Rotel. And I'll take some of these green chilies and put in there. My kids don't mind that so much. It's the red tomatoes that they just have an issue with. Okay, so I'm going to rinse this Rotel out. I'm going to add some of that liquid to the cheese dip too. Okay. So I've got that added, and I'm going to stir that up, and then I'm going to add my cream cheese, the whipped cream cheese. If you want to use a block of cream cheese, that's fine. I prefer to use the whipped in my cheese dip. And the only way that I will add the whipped cream cheese is if I have a whisk, because in this particular whisk, I think I've shown this before, it doesn't have a lot of, it's not very wide. It's very, you know, the whisk element is very close together, and it breaks up the little pieces of cream cheese. So you don't have issues, you know, with pieces of cream cheese in your cheese dip. That whisk helps all of that to disappear. but you just have to, you know, whisk it, and watch, you know, as the cheese dip is cooking, whisking it. You don't have to do it the whole time, but you need to watch it, you know, whisk it and all of that. And as soon as you see that it's disappeared, you know, the cream cheese is dissolved into the cheese dip, you don't have to just stand there and keep whisking. Okay, but you want to make sure that it doesn't work with a normal whisk. It only works with that kind of, you know, whisk that has those coils that are very, very close together. It'll break up that cream cheese. You'll be amazed. And I have that on medium heat. And I'm going to go ahead and add in the Velveeta as well. But first, let me kind of whisk this cream cheese in. And at this point, if you just like the way that the Tostitos cheese dip tastes, you don't have to add Velveeta. My family prefers Velveeta, so I'll add a little bit of that in there. They really don't know too much that I add this to it. I don't know what they think, but because this really has a good flavor. But I add a little bit of Velveeta to it just to make them happy. So, but see, you can see like there's some whipped cream cheese right there, and that's getting ready to go away. But you see how you don't see any white pieces. You just don't. And I'm going to sit here and continue whisking it too. And at the end, you're not going to see anything. I see a little bit, but not like what you would normally see if you didn't have that whisk in there. And so that's how you get rid of those little white pieces of cream cheese, is with a whisking agent like that, where the slotting and the whisking is you know, very narrow. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn this down just a little bit more because I definitely don't want that to scorch. There's nothing worse than some cheese dip with black stuff floating in it and smelling burnt. So, but there we go. And I'm just going to add a little bit of Velveeta. And I normally keep my Velveeta in the fridge. I keep it in the cabinet when it's not open. It melts a lot better to me when it's warm, like, you know, room temperature. But sometimes you don't have time to set it out, and you grab it out of the fridge and you add it to your cheese dip, and it just takes it longer to melt. That's all that ends up happening. Okay, so I'm gonna add about this much Velveeta. That's about all I'm gonna add, because it just really doesn't need a whole lot. And the reason why I tend to like dilute is because the Velveeta makes your cheese dip very stiff and very hard and clumpy. Not clumpy, but just stiff. So if you ever have had cheese dip where it's just very, very stiff, as it gets cooler, like you put the cheese dip over your chips, and you're at a friend's house and you put it on the chips and you walk over and sit on the sofa and the cheese dip is already, you know, thick and hard, it's because they didn't dilute the cheese dip down. They just used some Velveeta and just kept going. So you'll want to make sure that you dilute, that you put some water or some type of cream or something in your cheese. And if you use a heavy whipping cream, you'll want to add a little bit of water to that. Or you can use some whole milk, just so your cheese dip is not real stiff. And even it's not real stiff even as it cools off a little bit. It still has a nice cheese dippy kind of consistency. Okay. So I'm going to turn this up just a little bit, because with the addition of that Velveeta, I can tell the temperature kind of dropped a little bit in the saucepan, or yeah. So let's see here. Okay, and so and I'm just scraping the bottom of the saucepan as well, just to make sure nothing is sticking, because we don't want the cheese dip to scorch. And so I'll stand here and kind of stir this until that Velveeta is, you know, has dissolved. And then that'll be it. Yeah, that'll be it. I don't think that I'm gonna add any whipping cream to this. It's just based on whether or not it appears stiff to me once this little, there's a little, see that hunk right there? So I'm gonna wait for that to melt down and dissolve and incorporate into the cheese dip. If it has a stiff quality to it, meaning the entire cheese dip, I'll probably add some water, a little bit of water, because see how it has the appearance of creaminess. So I don't think I'm gonna use any whipping cream. And as this Rotel still sits here, you know, tomatoes kind of, they hold water. So I'll even squeeze some more liquid out of there and add over here too, to see if there's any liquid left from those tomatoes. And then if there's not any, then I'll add some water to it if I feel it's necessary. But I don't think I'm going to use any whipping cream. I don't think so. You can see there, no cream cheese clumps, no white little specks. It's all very smooth. I'm gonna taste this really quick. I'm gonna get a tasting spoon and see if I wanna add any black pepper to it. And at this point, because it's cheese dip, I'm gonna turn the eye off and move it because that eye stays, you know, retains heat. So I don't want it to scorch my cheese dip. Let's see. I'm just gonna put a little bit on here. I don't want a whole lot. Let me taste that. It's good. And you can also, and it has a little bit of heat in it from the jalapenos. You can also put crushed red pepper in here to add more heat. It's enough heat for me. I don't think I'm gonna add any black pepper. Well, I may. Let me just add just a little sprinkle so you can kind of see. I think it looks nice. It reminds me of the cheese dip at El Chico back in the day. El Chico's cheese dip had like black pepper on the top or something, and it was some of the, to me, I was young, I was a teenager, you know, your palate changes as you get older, but that was some of the best cheese dip to me as a teenager. Not Mexico Chiquito, but El Chico. Their cheese dip, they had black pepper in there. It was good. Okay, so I've added the black pepper, and it just gives it a little, you know, a little color. And it will give it some heat too. And I love you guys so much. And thank you. And just be sure to like and subscribe. I keep forgetting to say that. But I really do appreciate everybody that, you know, takes the time to watch these videos. All right. So y'all take care, and I'll see you next time at 234 En La Casa. Bye-bye.